Yeah, so I think the really powerful context for today's class is chapter 5 itself, which we spend a lot of time discussing in class as well, where there is a theme for this chapter. The theme is knowledge. Krishna has been praising knowledge and describing it in a descriptive as well as a prescriptive way, which is to say, he is encouraging us to embrace knowledge, to cultivate knowledge, and in that sense, is prescriptive. He's prescribing it to us. But then he's also describing the ramifications of it. So, for instance, in the earlier classes, we discussed how a person who has cultivated the type of knowledge that Krishna has been proposing in this chapter would attain equal vision. And that person would be able to see a brahmana, a cow, an elephant, a dog, and a dog eater all the same, which there's a very nice hierarchy here, because we start with the brahmana, who is the top of the human species, because it's highly elevated spiritually. Then there's a cow, who is a very high animal in the animal species, right? And then an elephant, which is kind of in the middle, and then a dog, which especially in the Vedic culture is supposed to be like a car, like a, not dirty in the sense of, you know, like you need to take a bath to make the dog a little bit clean, but it's more like an animal that you don't really bring at home. Like you can see cows inside of people's home, and you're touching the cow and you're having this symbiotic relationship with a cow, but not really with a dog. Like you don't really touch a dog. You don't really bring a dog inside of your house. But then there's a dog eater. Like what? Like if you're not really even touching the dog, what to speak of eating it, right? That makes you really, really low. And furthermore, what are you doing eating a dog if you are in a human body? You're supposed to be like the Brahmana, not so degraded to the extent that you would eat that dog. And we treated this topic very nicely in one of our past episodes, where Varangi very expertly pointed out that in our Western culture, we could replace the dog by cows or chickens, things that we eat here, to bring that point home that yes, the dog is a little bit more dirty from the Vedic perspective, but even more so, this point is addressing eating animals in general, you know, which is, as a human being, it's not the best idea. So given these very big levels, still that Brahmana, that learned person who has cultivated knowledge that Krishna has been proposing in this chapter would see these living entities all the same. So that would be the description of someone who has attained such a knowledge, which is to say that not that person does not understand that the Brahmana is more elevated than the dog eater. The Brahmana, the person who has cultivated such a knowledge does understand, but does not discriminate, because they are aware that inside of all these different bodies and their different hierarchies, there is an eternal spiritual soul who is very beloved to Krishna, who is also part and parcel of Krishna. And because that spiritual vision and that spiritual understanding is so much more prominent in a person who has such a knowledge in that person's consciousness, then this secondary, more superficial distinctions between animal body, human body, good human, bad human, are secondary. It fades to the background in the light of the truth, which is, yes, all these different bodies, but we are all eternal spiritual souls, part and parcel of God. So that knowledge would allow you to see that. And there, like we discussed in the previous podcast also, there is huge benefits, not only spiritual, but also even material and ethical, to having that knowledge, because then all of racism would disappear. Because if we are talking about seeing a Brahmana and a dog as the same, then what to speak of a a Brahmana in a white body and a Brahmana in a black body. So they're both definitely going to be equal as well. So racism between races of all kinds, whether it is in the human species or animal species, would all disappear, and we wouldn't kill animals and eat them unnecessarily. So there are many, many ramifications to that. What to speak of the biggest one, which is to recognize how magnificent and loving God is to be with us in every single body. He's so merciful. He's so knowledgeable because he knows, like we know our body in our own consciousness in the first person experience, but Krishna is there as the super soul in every body as well, knowing everybody's experience as well. So he highlights his omniscience and his omnibenevolence and omnipotence. So anyways, and Krishna does describe knowledge in this chapter in other ways as well, descriptive and prescriptive, right? And more or less, that's what the chapter has been covering. That has been the theme of the chapter, these different types of this knowledge, this spiritual knowledge, and all of its good ramifications. Then, in this very last text, text 29, which I'll go ahead and read it. So this is the last text of chapter 5, which reads, a person in full consciousness of me. So this is Krishna speaking. A person in full consciousness of me, knowing me to be the ultimate beneficiary of all sacrifices and austerities, the supreme lord of all planets and demigods, and the benefactor and well-wisher of all living entities, attains peace from the pangs of material miseries. So now what has happened here is that as per the theme of the chapter, which is knowledge, Krishna now has shifted that knowledge from various things such as equanimity of mind, eco-vision, etc., but to himself in the sense of knowing me, Krishna says now, like your knowledge that allows you to know things, it is now focused on knowing me. So Krishna now becomes the object of knowledge. So then there's a big shift because he hasn't done that. Although the chapter's theme is knowledge, it has never been knowledge directed towards Krishna, where Krishna is the object of knowledge. But this text does do that, the very last one. So then it becomes quite interesting because it's now, yeah, knowledge, 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 but at the end, knowledge of me is actually the top. So let's say knowledge of Krishna would be the Brahmana. And then knowledge of other things would be, you know, the cow, the elephants, and so on. But the top, the best knowledge, then is that knowledge by which you can know Krishna. So then Krishna says, know me to be the ultimate beneficiary of all sacrifices and austerities. Which is also another interesting point here. Krishna says, if you know me in that way, then you can attain peace from the pangs of material miseries. Which to me, when the first times that I've read this text, it begged the question, well, how is it that knowing Krishna is going to give me peace from material existence? I can, in an abstract, indirect way, kind of come up with a few assumptions, thinking, well, if I know God, then I'm going to be automatically more elevated in my consciousness, in my spiritual consciousness, and therefore, as a byproduct, become more peaceful. But it had been an assumption of mine. And as we covered this text more in depth, and also in Prabhupada's purport of this text, there is a more definite explanation of how this knowledge of Krishna leads to peace, peace from the pangs of material existence. And Prabhupada explains that in the material world, in material existence, meaning the spiritual living entity having this experience of a material body, we are by default in a position where we want to lord over material nature. And that in itself deserves some explanation, right? What does that mean? Well, it means that, for example, oil, crude oil, it's a natural resource of Earth. And what do we do with it without knowing its ultimate purpose? Like, I would argue that nobody truly knows what is the purpose of oil. In fact, in the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is, let's say, the graduate studies to Bhagavad Gita, there is very in-depth descriptions of the actual role that crude oil plays in relationship to our planet. And it is not for the purpose of the automobile industry. It is for other purposes. We have gravity as a scientific fact that we understand today. And gravity is just a thing that works in the way it does. Prabhupada also explained that by default, our position in material nature is impersonal. And gravity becomes such an impersonal force. It's there, we can measure it, we know it, we can scientifically observe it, but it's like a thing, it's impersonal. Whereas in Srimad Bhagavatam, in spirituality in general, Vaishnava philosophy anyways, things are very personal. And there's always a personality behind everything, including gravity. And it is not just a thing. There's actually, let's say, a demigod that actually controls the movements of Earth. And oil, crude oil, is actually a big part of that, is a big component that allows for the gravitational route of our planet to take place in its proper way. So by consuming it in a way that is not meant for, we are lording it over material nature. We are thinking we're the lords of material nature. We're going to exploit everything there is, whether it's oil, whether it's gold, whether it's diamonds, for our own benefit, for our own sense gratification. And you can continue to expand this thought exercise and see how we do end up doing that. We cut down trees for the purpose of industrialization. We burn coal for the purpose of transportation. And so much that we do for the environment is really exploiting it. We are really thinking we're the lords of this environment. Whatever it is that is going to please our senses, we're going to do despite of its consequences. Therefore, global warming, which is a problem that is so big, nobody can truly understand it. And what to speak of coming up with a proper solution. Or even animals, what to speak of animals. There's a cow there and we are thinking, well, it tastes good, so I'm gonna kill it and eat it. So that is our propensity of lording over material nature. In that mindset, in that psychology, we are setting ourselves up for so much potential miseries because now there's competition. There's a particular nation that has more oil. Well, that nation is rich because the entire planet depends on oil. That nation is now really rich. Now all kinds of politics and even wars will arise because of that. There will be disputes of every kind because with this lording over material nature, I want to lord it so that I benefit from it. Either I, meaning strictly myself, or I, meaning myself in my family, or I, meaning myself in my country, like my nation. And therefore there is us versus them. There's my nation and how much we can lord over material nature and therefore become rich and economically developed versus this other nation. So then all these conflicts are now going to arise due to this propensity of lording over material nature. Competition, us versus them, my tribe versus your tribe, and how much we can have for ourselves. This scenario will cause so much suffering and so much pain. It is practically our experience in the world nowadays. Who is to say that the cause of wars isn't oil necessarily, right? So much of it has been done because of oil and our wanting to exploit countries. Us, I mean the United States, exploiting countries that are more rich in oil, and we were going to do seemingly whatever it takes to be able to exploit them, even if it leads to some kind of war. So yes, now, if we, with knowledge of Krishna, if we recognize, like Krishna is saying here, a person in full consciousness of me, knowing me to be the ultimate beneficiary of all sacrifices and austerities, the supreme lord of all planets, well, what is our position then? If Krishna is the ultimate beneficiary of all sacrifices and austerities, everything is for him. Everything then is meant for him. And we should just follow the lead. We should just go with the flow. Krishna is the ultimate beneficiary of all sacrifices and austerities, not me or my family or my community or my nation. It is Krishna. Krishna is the ultimate beneficiary. And that would allow us to let go of this unhealthy competition, of this unhealthy propensity to lord over material nature, because everything is meant for Krishna's enjoyment. Everything is meant for Krishna's pleasure. And if we were to see things that way, our me versus them mentality would disappear. Our propensity to lord over material nature would disappear, because we wouldn't necessarily dig for oil and offer it to Krishna. Krishna doesn't need oil. Krishna needs our love. Is the only thing that he ever asks for. So all of this mentality would disappear, and therefore we would become more peaceful, because there wouldn't be us versus them anymore to the extent that there is today. And we would all be working towards the same goal, which is to please Krishna. So if we all had that knowledge that Krishna is the ultimate beneficiary of all sacrifices and austerities, then we would all work accordingly for Krishna's pleasure. And we would be essentially one family working for the benefit, not the benefit, but for the pleasure of Krishna. Similar to how Prabhupada created the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. We spoke about this. So even between me and you, Kim, I am in an African body, you are in an Asian body, Varangi is in a Latin body. And you look in our society, the Krishna Consciousness Society, we have devotees in Russian bodies, we have devotees in Ukrainian bodies, Indian bodies, of course, and we are all under one society, because we do have that understanding. Krishna is the ultimate beneficiary of all sacrifices and austerities. And we work in that consciousness. And in our International Society for Krishna Consciousness, there is peace. We are all working under the same knowledge. If the whole world was to embrace this knowledge, then we would be free from the pangs of material existence. So I just wanted to elaborate on this. How does it lead from knowing Krishna as the ultimate beneficiary, beneficiary of all sacrifices and austerities, to peace? Is that clear? What are your thoughts on that, Kim?
Yeah, thank you. I really liked the fact that you drew out the point of Krishna being the ultimate enjoyer, because that concept in and of itself we could spend days on. And when I think about that, it's interesting how when you apply it to every aspect of your life, like, oh, I'm really enjoying this food, and well, Krishna is the ultimate enjoyer. Oh, I got this money, this extra money from work, and how much should I donate to the temple, or how much? And we analyze and break down our lives in such ways that is, as you said, fueling competition, fueling insecurities and fears. And if we know it all comes from one place and it all belongs to one person, and we're pretty insignificant as to why it even appeared in our lives, and how it can easily dissolve in our lives for good, for better, for worse, for good reasons and bad reasons. And when we can really wrap our minds around this idea that Krishna is the ultimate enjoyer, it really takes the impact, I think, out of our biggest fears in life, our biggest worries, our biggest pleasures. We have all these big ups and downs in life. And like we said in last week's class, that goal of equanimity, whether it's how we view all things and all people, and really how we view all events that happen in our lives as well. Yeah, it's a really nice point of Krishna being the ultimate enjoyer. And I also liked your point about how when you have a common goal and you work together, it decreases competition. Because even within religious factions and denominations where my God and your God and everyone getting into that competitive mode, and it creates isolation and animosity. And when supposedly we're all supposed to be focused on the one similar goal of loving God, I really liked that point about what are we really focused on? Is it my group is better than your group, or are we actually focused on worshiping and loving God?
Is the reason why companies work. In fact, when we think about Google, Apple, Microsoft, these big companies, that is what they have been able to accomplish, to get a large number of intelligent people to all accept and work for one goal, which is the company. And that works. In fact, I just read an article on the news the other day where the secrets that both Elon Musk and Steve Jobs were able to apply to their companies. And it was again to this point that they were able to dissolve divisions even within the company. That, oh no, we are the engineers, we are the architects, we are the marketing, we are the sales, etc. Because you know, when you get to companies that are so big, like Google, Apple, etc., those
Starbucks.
Exactly. Then those divisions, even within the company, these wise, not wise, let's say intelligent, these intelligent leaders of these companies have been able to detect as a problem. And to eliminate that is per what they're saying. Elon Musk and Steve Jobs themselves was one of the biggest things that they were able to accomplish in terms of a culture for their company, that we are all one. And we are working under one common goal to make our company good. Of course, that leaves the other company as your competitor, but at least within that one company is that philosophy that allows them to prosper. But the good news is that God is this way. In fact, very nice segue to the other part of this text, where Krishna says, okay, I'll read the whole thing again. So a person in full consciousness of me, knowing me to be the ultimate beneficiary of all sacrifices and austerities, the supreme Lord of all planets and demigods, right? So unlike Google, who still has Apple as a competitor, so even if you attain that sameness, that unity within that one company, still there's that other company now that you have to compete against. But when Krishna states, I am the supreme Lord of all planets, well, there is no stones unturned. It's like he is at the top of it all. And if we know him, again, knowledge, right? The theme of this chapter, but they're now being focused on Krishna. If we know him like that, the supreme Lord of all planets, I mean, what to speak of different companies in one planet? We're talking about all possible companies in all planets in the entire universe. Krishna says, I'm the supreme Lord of it all. So if we embrace that, then every living entity in any planetary system and in the entire universe, or in the entire universe says, or even in the spiritual manifestation, Krishna is the supreme Lord of it all and the ultimate enjoyer of it all. And our enjoyment is not that we are devoid from enjoyment. It's not that we are devoid from pleasure, but our pleasure and our enjoyment comes from pleasing Krishna. Because if Krishna is pleased, given the fact that we are part and parcel of Krishna, then we are automatically pleased. So it's not that Krishna is the ultimate enjoyer and then there's no more joy for anybody else. He is the ultimate enjoyer, but we become joyful pleasing him. Is the philosophy that we are part and parcel of him. We've spoken about this in quality, we are one. We can imagine a mountain, a golden mountain and a golden ring. In size, the mountain is huge and the ring is small, but they're both gold, which is to say that if Krishna is the ultimate enjoyer, then to enjoy is part of his nature, part of his qualities, and therefore part of our nature as well. But how we attain that enjoyment differs. Krishna attains that enjoyment because he is the ultimate beneficiary of all sacrifices and austerities. In other words, all the sacrifices that all the living entities are performing is to please Krishna. All the austerities that all living entities are performing is to please Krishna. So in that sense, he is the ultimate enjoyer because he receives all of these sacrifices and austerities. But we, the living entities that are performing these sacrifices and austerities for his pleasure, we become joyful given the fact that Krishna is joyful. The analogy that Prabhupada oftentimes uses is that we consider our body as the whole, and we consider the hand as a part of the whole. So our hand in our body is a part of the whole, and the body is the whole. Now, when the whole, the body, has the feeling of hunger, well, how do we satisfy the hunger? Well, every part of the body conducts its own duty. So let's say the hand's duty is to go and reach out for some food stuff and bring it to the mouth. The mouth's part is to chew it and swallow it. And then it goes to the stomach. And then the stomach digests and provides the nutrition to the whole body. And then the whole body is now satisfied. So we can say that the hands and the mouth and the stomach were all performing their respective austerities and sacrifices in order to please the whole, the body, so that hunger could go away. Now, what happens when hunger goes away from the whole, from the body? Well, automatically, the hand is satisfied. Automatically, the mouth is satisfied. Automatically, the stomach is satisfied. Why? Because the hand, the mouth, and the stomach are all part of the whole. So if the whole is satisfied, then all the parts are also satisfied. So it's not that we are devoid from enjoyment, but Krishna receives all of our efforts to please him. And as he is pleased, so are all of us.
Yeah,
So
I like that point.
Works.
I like that point about there's people might worry that, oh, where's my joy if all the joy is for Krishna? You know, I have a counseling practice, and one of the common concerns with commitment in relationships is, well, if I commit fully to this relationship, then all of a sudden that person, all of my focus should be on that person. They're the most important person. And then where does that leave me? It's a very honest sentiment, but I know that this can easily apply to religion as well. Like, well, if I give all my worship and adoration and adulation to God, what am I getting out of it? You know? And so I thought that's a really good point to know that when we think of Krishna as a person, not this big energy in the sky that's a little bit mysterious, but when we think of Krishna and God as a person who loves us and wants our love, and liken it to, say, love with a spouse, we want to love them and we feel love from them. And so Krishna's just looking for that reciprocal relationship where he wants to give us so much love? And are we able to recognize it? And are we receptive to it?
Exactly. That's an excellent point. We are part of him. We are the soul, spiritual. Krishna is the whole spiritual being, and we are part of that. And if he's happy, we are happy. And our duty is to please him, and by pleasing him, we become automatically happy, right? So now, another part of this text which really got my attention is this very interesting dichotomy here. So I'll read the text again. A person in full consciousness of me, knowing me to be the ultimate beneficiary of all sacrifices and austerities, the supreme Lord of all planets and demigods, and the benefactor and well-wisher of all living entities. Now, the dichotomy I'm speaking about is when Krishna is talking of himself as the supreme Lord of all planets and the well-wisher of all living entities. That's a big dichotomy here, because when you tell me I'm the supreme Lord of all planets, I am automatically in awe and reverence. I'm going to bow down to you. You're the supreme Lord of all planets. I'm a little bit skeptical even. It's like, oh my gosh, like, how do I even approach such a being if you're the supreme Lord of all planets? Again, we're discussing companies here, right? So imagine, like, you and I both we are in IT, so we can relate a little bit more to companies like Google and Apple and so on, right? So let's say if Tim Cook certainly walks in the room and he says, hey, would you like to work for us? And I'm like, wow, that's Tim Cook right there, that's like Elon Musk, I don't know. Or let's say, Barack Obama walks in, or Vladimir Putin, if you're Russian, right? And then that personality just walks in the room and they are the supreme Lord of that country or they're the supreme Lord of that company, right? I'm like in awe and reverence. I'm almost a little bit skeptical, like, how do I even address this person? Well, Krishna here is claiming his position as the supreme Lord of all planets, like of all there be. That's saying a whole lot. And I am automatically just almost want to turn away. It's like, it's too much for me to behold. It's too much power. It's too much energy. It's too much goodness. Like, I am not that good. I'm a falling, ignorant soul. Who am I to behold such a magnificent being who is the Lord of all planets? So I get that feeling by reading that part of the text. But then Krishna so poetically and so in such a beautiful way follows up in the same text by saying, and I am the well-wisher of all living entities. Now that changed things a lot, because the well-wisher, well, he's wishing me well. Certainly he's no longer impersonal. He's very much a person because he's wishing me well. And what kind of a person that is, right? Like, we can, among friends, we can say, oh, I wish you have a good day. What is in my power to make sure you have a good day? Well, nothing but that wish, to be honest. I'm just wishing. But Krishna, if he is the supreme Lord of all planets, claiming that power, claiming that position, and then following up by saying, and I'm your well-wisher, I'm the person that is in a relationship with you to the extent that I am becoming your well-wisher, and of all living entities, again, the very knowledge that he was talking about earlier, the equal vision among all entities. He's not discriminating whether I am that Brahmana or I am that dog eater. Krishna is saying all living entities. He's not discriminating against your, let's say, ignorant state of consciousness. Still, Krishna loves you. If you are that dog eater, Krishna is saying, I am your well-wisher. If you are that Brahmana, Krishna is saying, I'm your well-wisher, and everything in between, the elephants and the dog. So, because Krishna, of course, has the knowledge that he's been prescribing to us. So Krishna now is the well-wisher of all living beings. And what a powerful well-wisher. So it creates this dichotomy of power and love. And that has always been interesting to me. We call Srila Prabhupada Bhaktivedanta, it's part of his title. Bhakti, it's, love, loving devotion, right? And Vedanta is really philosophy, like truth, philosophy, knowledge, like this healthy discrimination, right? So what is it about that, like I was asking myself, that attracts me to this concept of Bhakti and Vedanta, love and truth, sentiment and rationality together, right? And I have never truly been able to explain in details why, but in class, Tukaram brought up what I believe to be the reason that I have been attracted to this concept, but not truly knowing exactly why, which was the following. Suppose I say I love you. Okay, let's get married. Okay. And 2 or 3 years later, well, let's get divorced. We are very well too familiar with that, unfortunately. Or any other thing, not necessarily just a couple's relationship. I love this company and I just got hired. Great, I love it. Well, I just got fired or I no longer like it, right? So this so-called love without truth, without a platform of philosophical understanding of duties and responsibilities to one another, is nothing but a fairy tale, is nothing but a superficial and shallow sentiment, which is going to disappear very quickly in the clutches of time. And it never was to begin with. So it's very shallow, and he holds no water, and he has no power. It is just a shallow representation of lust, actually. When we say, I love you, let's get married, but I have no sense of duties and responsibilities to you. I have no sense of truth. Who am I? I'm a spiritual soul. Who are you? Well, you are a spirit soul as well. And what is our ontological position? Like, what are we to do for each other? If we are to get married and be each other's soulmate, like, how do we truly help each other? How do we help each other stand up to the calamities of life? Because life presents a lot of suffering and a lot of challenges to us. If us as partners, if we're not able to help each other and fulfill our duties to each other, then what is the question of love? We're like, where's the love? Like, what is this? It's not love. This is lust. So this Bhaktivedanta concept to me has been attractive, and took around kind of like explaining and defining it because of this point. Love that sprouts from the platform of truth, of responsibilities, of duties, is true love and powerful love. And I think Krishna is painting that picture here. He's saying, I am the supreme Lord of all planets. I'm not someone who is going to be, oh, I'm going to be your best friend today because it's Friday and I feel good. But then I'm going to be gossiping about you behind your back on a Monday when I don't feel good because I didn't sleep well last night or whatever the case may be. And then I'm gossiping of you. Like, the supreme Lord of all planets is not such a person. His character is strong. His character is real. It's true. It's the absolute truth. It's, Vedanta, Tattva, like knowledge, reason. That's such a personality here. That's the supreme Lord of all planets. That's what we're talking about here. So when he says, I love you, and I'm your well-wisher, and I'm your best friend, that's real. That's true. That's love that is not gonna matter even in which body you are. If you are the Brahmana in a human body, well, great. That's, you know, good karma you've collected. Krishna is still your well-wisher. If you are in a dark part of your existence, such as a dog eater, Krishna is still there as your best friend, as your well-wisher, as your lover, because his character is true, is based on knowledge, is based on philosophy, Vedanta. Like, he understands his position, he understands our position, and he's never going to forsake us. So this idea of Bhakti in Vedanta, this idea of I am the supreme lord of all planets, which makes him powerful and strong in his character, but then your well-wisher, that's something you can believe in. That's something you can count on. That is not something that is just gonna, oh, I lust for you today, but go away now because you no longer satisfy my lust. That's not that. That's something that is what we call the absolute truth, the supreme personality of Godhead, who loves us truly and absolutely. And that's powerful, you know, and I guess I have always been attracted to this concept, but never been able to point the finger why exactly. And I truly believe that's why. What are your thoughts on that, Kim?
Well, you explained that so expertly, and I think you just described a concern that I had, not a concern, but an interesting point, that question that I had as well. Like, how do you have an intimate, that was one of my first questions with Tukaram Prabhu when I first started coming to the temple, was how do you have an intimate relationship with a powerful God? And coming from a conservative Christian background, even when I read this verse for the first time in my life, the part about being a benefactor and well-wisher of all living entities, I just completely skipped over that because I was a little bit in awe of Supreme Lord of all planets and demigods. And so for you to really highlight that and hit that home of love based on truth, because up until that point in my life, I had love based on superficial things, based on conditional things. And so this idea of Krishna really always being there for us and us being the X factor whenever there's a dip in our relationship with God. This is such a powerful verse to know that God is, yes, omnipotent, all powerful, but God is all good. And I really liked Tukaram's point in class of saying that from a philosophical point of view, Krishna is all good and thus the well-wisher of all living entities. But from a personal subjective point of view, the fact that Krishna is our best friend is the cornerstone of bhakti. And that really moved me. Like, oh, our subjective experience with an all-loving God, that's what's really powerful for me. Is, yes, on paper it's great that we have an all good God who's the well-wisher of all living entities, but the way I feel special and the way that my love grows with Krishna is, oh, Krishna is my best friend and he's there for me no matter what stupid ignorant things that I do and say. And so it's just a really powerful verse, I think.
Yeah, I'm going to try to bring two stories here to supplement what we're talking about because it's such a sweet point. And we are entering this month of Kartik that we talk about. I think is a very sweet time for Vaishnavas, which are us. And this point is so important. It's such a central point of Kartik, this holy month of ours now. And I want to bring two stories in perspective to highlight this point. These are two stories from Srimad Bhagavatam. The first one is in the 7th canto, where the pastime of Prahlada Maharaj and Hiranyakashipu takes place. So we are almost towards the end of this episode, so I will unfortunately summarize these stories, even though these stories, they have enough content in them for us to have 10 episodes on these stories alone, each one of them. So it's going to be a very small summary of it all. So Prahlad is Hiranyakashipu's son, little son. He's 5 years old at the time of this pastime. And Hiranyakashipu is the biggest terrorist, the biggest universal terrorist the entire universe has ever known. He's the biggest demon that the entire universe has ever known. It is said that powerful demigods that were, let's say, in one planet, and Hiranyakashipu was in another planet, like distant planets from each other, not even neighboring planets, distant planets from each other within our universe. And very, very powerful demigods would recognize that Hiranyakashipu was becoming angry, and they could recognize that that was the case because Hiranyakashipu would raise his eyebrow. Just by Hiranyakashipu raising his eyebrow and giving that slight indication that he's becoming angry, these very, very powerful demigods from a far distant planet, they would flee in terror that Hiranyakashipu may do something right now. So this is the power of Hiranyakashipu. These are demigods that we're talking about. You know, we're not talking about a strong, big man on earth. We're talking about a demigod. We're talking about a powerful demigod in a distant planet. And just by them perceiving the slight indication that Hiranyakashipu was becoming angry, Hiranyakashipu was just sitting there. He was not even like standing up or yelling or screaming or doing anything. He's just raising his eyebrow. That was enough to create fear in these powerful demigods, and they would just go away, even farther away, right? So that is Hiranyakashipu. Extremely powerful. In fact, another thing is in the hierarchy of our universe, person number one is Lord Brahma. So he's the most powerful demigod. He's the most senior being in our entire universe. So Lord Brahma is person number one. Person number two is Lord Shiva. Lord Shiva is the destroyer of the entire universe. And he's very mystical in his own self. But let's just say the most powerful person, number one in our universe, is Lord Brahma. Number two is Lord Shiva. There were only two people in the entire universe that Hiranyakashipu didn't torment. That was Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva. Every other living entity, every other planet was under the subjugation, the dominion of Hiranyakashipu. He had terrorized and he had conquered the entire universe, except for Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva. So that is Hiranyakashipu, very powerful demon, terrorist of the entire universe. Prahlad Maharaj is his 5-year-old son who is very saintly and who revealed his love for Krishna, Vishnu, to Hiranyakashipu, which made him completely angry. Like, I'm the most powerful being in the universe. How are you going to talk about worshiping anybody else but me? So anyways, the story develops to the extent that Hiranyakashipu now is going to kill his own son, his own saintly son, Prahlad. Krishna, being the well-wisher of every living entity, especially his devotees, is not having any of that. So Krishna incarnates as Nishringadev. Now, I did my best to describe how powerful and fierce Hiranyakashipu was here, his universal position. Nishringadev, Krishna displaying his unhappiness towards Hiranyakashipu because he was tormenting his beloved Prahlad, was to such an extent that our acharyas described that when Krishna incarnates as Nishringadev to kill Hiranyakashipu and put an end to his demoniac nature, it is described that the fight between the two was like a little moth flying into a huge fire. And the Hiranyakashipu was the little moth, right? The little flight flying into a huge, vast fire. And that was the end of Hiranyakashipu. So now imagine the power of Nishringadev, who incarnated as half lion and half man to protect Prahlada Maharaj against this big demon, Hiranyakashipu. Imagine how powerful Nisringadev was. Nisringadev was just playing around with Hiranyakashipu. In fact, he picks him up, puts him on his lap, and just dismantle his entire body and takes out his guts. Anyways, it's a beautiful story. If you read in context, it would be much more pleasing. So that's a lot of power here. That's Nisringadev. That's a lot of power in terms of Krishna displaying power. I'm not yet aware of a pastime that could picture his power better than this. Then there's another story, the story of Krishna in Vrindavan, himself as a little boy, running around displaying sweet pastimes with his beloved, intimate beloved from Vrindavan, one of which is his mother, Mother Yasoda, who is such an angelical picture. And when you think about Mother Yasoda, that's the archetype of motherly love. If you picture a mother who is in love with their children, like it's difficult to conceive a more beautiful sight, because such a mother is so given and compassionate and so focused on what's best for this child. Not in a powerful way, but in a vulnerable way. I'm just acting out of love. And it's a mother, so it's not supposed to be a strong figure, like I mean in the physical sense, right? She's a mother, she's caring, her nature is to be sweet. So if you imagine Mother Yasoda, who is in the ultimate position of being Krishna's mother and is enjoying this pastime of being Krishna's mother. And Krishna, as a 5-year-old boy, as every 5-year-old boy would be, is quite naughty. And he's running around and doing his naughty things. And then he breaks Mother Yashoda's pot that she was churning butter, right? There was milk and she was churning butter and so on. And Krishna, being naughty, kind of breaks that and does other things in the pastime. But Mother Yasoda kind of becomes angry at him, as any psychologically healthy mother would want to behave, ensure that their sons are behaving in a proper manner. And Krishna was displaying a naughty pastime of his. He was asking for it. So she actually displays that, like, I'm going to now discipline you, Krishna, and gets up and runs after Krishna. Now, Krishna, playing his part as a young son very well, he actually forgets his position as God. He's really, truly that young boy and runs away from Mother Yasoda because he's in fear that she's going to catch him and punish him for the misdeeds that he's just performed. The philosophical point here is that Krishna is actually running away from her and that Mother Yasoda is actually running after him. Well, if God wants to run away from something or somebody, who can catch him? Because it's God. He's the most powerful being that we're just talking about here. But he's actually running away from her. That's the philosophy of it. That's not to lose sight. Like, I can't overstate this that much. He is actually running away from her with all his powers. But Mother Yashoda actually catches him. It's already bewildering. But not only that, she actually binds him and conquers him. And Krishna is defeated by Mother Yasoda. Now, there's a huge difference between Mother Yasoda and Hiranyakashipu. When Krishna wanted to display his power, he came and annihilated the biggest demon there was, Hiranyakashipu. But then now he's trying to run away from Mother Yasoda, and he can't. And she's able to actually conquer him and bind him and chastise him. Well, what's going on here? Like, what's happening? And this is the sweetness of Krishna. He has the quality to allow his pure to be conquered by the love of his pure devotees, which to me says so much, right? Is Hiranyakashipu his pure devotee? No. Hiranyakashipu's task was to kill him, not to love him. So then Krishna comes and destroys him. Is Mother Yasoda his pure devotee? Yes. Krishna is such an expert lover that he has the quality to forget himself as God and surrender to the love of his pure devotees, to the extent that Mother Yasoda actually caught him and actually bound him. That's the extent to which she loves him. And Krishna has that quality to surrender to the love, to the pure love of his pure devotees. Now that has a tie to this verse as well. Is this love real? Yes, it's real. Krishna is not surrendering to Mother Yasoda, who is actually, let's say, a brilliant tactician, who actually is just pretending to love him so much, to catch him vulnerable and then kill him and destroy him and conquer God, because she herself wants to be the controller of the universe. Krishna knows that that's not the case. So Krishna allows that true love. Krishna allows her love to conquer him, but this is based on knowledge. This is based on truth. Krishna is not just going to foolishly allow himself to be conquered by someone who doesn't truly love him, because he is the omniscient supreme God. And from that platform, he allows this true love to sprout that Mother Yasoda was exhibiting. And he even allows himself to be conquered by that love. So to me, these two stories paints that picture of Krishna's power and his knowledge and his supreme knowledge, and then his sweetness that he actually allows his to be conquered by his true devotees. He has the knowledge that this is my true devotee, that this is pure love for me. And he becomes vulnerable to the extent that he's actually trying to run away from Mother Yasoda, but he cannot, because he's truly surrendered to her, just like she's truly surrendered to him. And that is the platform of true love. Krishna even allows himself to be conquered by that. I find that to be fascinating.
Yeah, I agree. Like the whole concept of surrendering because of someone else's love. We think of arguments that we have in our lives with friends and partners, and it's, oh well, they finally apologized, or they finally agreed I was right, and then that's when you surrender and then love them again. And the idea of, oh, Krishna is going to be captured and bound by our love it blows the mind. I mean, yeah. And I love the lectures that Tukaram Prabhu has during this month of Kartik, on Sunday nights in particular. I really encourage you to give a listen at some point, 6 p.m. Pacific time, on the Laguna Beach Facebook page or Instagram. And yeah, it's a wonderful time of the year.
I think we use the statement of having our minds blown too casually. I think we say it too often. Our mind is a big, powerful thing. And for it to be blown, it requires something really powerful to blow our minds. And I find that we use that too casual, too often. It should be reserved for very special times when our minds are actually blown. This story of Mother Yasoda actually conquering Krishna, the supreme lord of all the beings, the supreme lord of all planets, the supreme lord who came over here and made Hiranyakashipu look like a foolish little child, and she actually conquers Krishna with her love. That blows my mind.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much for really unpacking this verse and walking us through it in the way that you did, to really hit home all aspects of Krishna and how it just supports what Krishna ultimately wants, which is a loving relationship with us. So we could have many episodes, as you said, just on this verse alone, on different aspects of this verse alone. And I really enjoyed talking to you. So
yes, it's the benefit of standing on the shoulders of giants.
Yes.
Like such as Tukaram and my guru and all the other Vaishnavas in the house that Prabhupada created. You know, we can hear from them and then we can repeat. So that's what we're doing here.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for listening and tuning in, and we will see you next week.
Hare
In chapter
Krishna.
6. Hare Krishna.